The town of Red Pine Crossing had a habit of watching without blinking. People gathered there not to help, not to speak, but to stare. Dusty boots lined the wooden boardwalk, and faces hardened by years of survival leaned forward, hungry for spectacle. In Red Pine, cruelty didn't shout. It whispered, smiled, and let things happen. That morning, the wind carried the sound of laughter. Not the warm kind. The sharp kind. At the center of the street stood Clara Mayfield, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. She was a big woman, strong-backed, broad-shouldered, built for work, but right now she looked smaller than she ever had. Her face was red, her eyes glassy, and her only dress, faded blue cotton, patched and washed thin by years, was being yanked from all sides. Look at her, someone sneered. She thinks she belongs here, another laughed. 3 town women circled her like vultures. They weren't strangers. They were wives, shopkeepers, churchgoers. Their hands were rough, their faces twisted with something uglier than anger, contempt. Clara tried to hold the fabric together, but it tore with a sound that cut deeper than any blade. The crowd laughed louder. Clara didn't scream. That was the worst part. She just stood there, shaking, as the last piece of dignity she owned was ruined in front of everyone. And no one moved to stop it. No one, except one man. At the edge of town, where the buildings thinned and the mountains rose like silent judges, Elias Crow stood still. Most people knew him only as the Mountain Man. Some called him a cowboy. Others called him dangerous. He was tall, broad, his beard streaked with gray, his coat lined with worn fur. His eyes were calm, almost distant, but they missed nothing. Elias had come to town for supplies. Flour. Salt. Nails. He had not come for trouble. But trouble had a way of finding him. He watched as the dress tore. Watched as Clara's shoulders sagged. Watched as the town laughed. Something in his jaw tightened. Years ago, Elias had sworn never to interfere again. He had learned the hard way what towns did to men who stood against the crowd. Silence had kept him alive. Distance had kept him sane. But silence, he realized, had also allowed this. He took one step forward. Then another. The laughter faltered. People noticed when Elias Crow moved. Not because he was loud, he wasn't, but because he carried himself like a man who had survived things others couldn't imagine. The women let go of Clara and backed away, suddenly uncertain. Elias walked to Clara without looking at anyone else. He removed his heavy coat and draped it over her shoulders, wrapping it around her carefully, respectfully. "You all right?" he asked quietly. Clara nodded, though tears streamed down her face. Elias turned to the crowd. That was when the town truly went silent. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply spoke. "This town has forgotten what decency looks like." A man scoffed. "She brought it on herself." Elia's eyes locked onto him. "You ever gone hungry?" Elias asked. The man hesitated. "You ever worn the same clothes till they fell apart?" No answer. "You ever been laughed at just for existing?" The man looked away. Elias took a slow breath. "Then you don't get to judge." The sheriff stepped forward, hand resting near his badge. "You causing trouble, Crow." Elias finally smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "No," he said. "I'm ending it." That afternoon, Elias walked Clara home. Her house sat at the edge of town, barely standing. Inside, there was little more than a table, a bed, and a wood stove. Elias left her his coat and a pouch of coins. "I'll bring you new fabric tomorrow," he said. "Strong stuff." Clara stared at him. "Why would you do this?" Elias paused at the door. "Because someone should have done it sooner." Word spread fast in Red Pine Crossing. Some said Elias was a hero. Others said he was a fool. But everyone knew one thing. He had broken the town's unspoken rule. And towns like Red Pine didn't forgive that. The next morning, Elias returned with cloth, food, and tools. He helped Clara fix her roof, reinforce her door. People watched from a distance. Then Elias did something no one expected. He went to the saloon. At noon. When everyone was awake. The saloon owner froze as Elias entered. Conversations died mid-sentence. Elias placed a small sack on the counter. It jingled. "Gold," he said. "Enough to cover debts." "For who?" the owner asked nervously. "For Clara Mayfield," Elias said. "Every coin she owes in this town." Cleared. Gasps filled the room. "And one more thing," Elias added, his voice steady. "Anyone who harms her again answers to me." The room stayed silent. No one challenged him. From that day on, things began to change. Not fast. Not easily. But they changed. Clara started working again, this time with fair pay. Children waved at her instead of mocking. Shopkeepers met her eyes. And Elias. He didn't stay. A week later, he rode out toward the mountains, the same way he had come. But Red Pine Crossing was no longer the same town. Because once, just once, a man had spoken when silence was easier. And that had shocked everyone.